Hi everybody, my name is Nancy Beach and I serve on the staff of the Willow Creek Association, primarily as a champion for artists, and I'm also a teaching pastor at my church. And as I thought about what I'd like to talk to you about in these next few minutes, of course I was trying to think of some really great leadership skill that I could share, but my mind kept returning over and over to something else, and it's a concern that really grows out of conversations I've had this summer. A few conversations that frankly have grieved me quite a bit. Occasionally, a person who's in a senior leadership role at a church from another state will seek me out over the phone or if they're in town as sort of a safe place. And usually these are whispered conversations. The person often feels very uncomfortable. And they don't use any names, but they disclose to me a struggle they're having as they try to serve in the inner circle of another senior leader whose life is really not exhibiting the character of Christ. Usually it displays itself as a lack of love or a lack of humility, a lack of gentleness. But generally speaking, what they're saying is as they get closer and closer to that person, instead of seeing more of Jesus, they see less. And they're trying to figure out how to function, how to communicate about those things, and what to make of it. Well, obviously that's very sad, because that's not how any of us want to be. And immediately I put the spotlight back on myself. And I asked myself the question, as people get closer and closer to me, do they discover more of Christ-likeness or less? What's really going on the insides? And I think that we all live in the evangelical world in sort of a celebrity kind of culture. I've witnessed this even in smaller churches, a place where senior leaders grow increasingly isolated, and it's quite easy for us to live in a state of denial about who we really are and how we're affecting those closest to us. And very rarely does truth get spoken to us. A key verse in my life is Proverbs 4:23. It says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." And as I enter this ministry season, I've decided that I need to be much more intentional about guarding my own heart. I think there's really three arenas where that's important or where that is helpful. And one is spiritual practices. I don't need to tell you anything about spiritual practices. Most of you teach about it all the time. But I've been asking myself, what kind of practices am I intentionally going to engage in this ministry season? In what ways am I going to set aside time for solitude and for silence? What practices are most likely to build in the kind of character traits that I feel I'm most weak in and most need help with? And then I want to look at safe relationships. I don't think a lot of senior leaders have very many of those. And there was a time in my life where I saw a Christian counselor. I think that's very helpful at some areas of our life. And outside of that, are there one or two people, either within or even outside your church, who are truly safe places for you? In fact, just yesterday I called a close friend, and after confessing something in my time alone with God, I needed to confess it to a human being as well. And she has become a very safe place for me, and a person who breathes life into me and who will speak truth to me. So I wanted to look at safe relationships, and then finally stretching experiences. I haven't had many of those where your growth just sort of takes a jump start sometimes when you expose yourself to some kind of stretching experience. And especially for me, as I've analyzed it this summer, it's been too long since I've exposed myself to third world poverty. It's been a few years, which is sort of ironic because my husband leads in that area of ministry. He travels to Africa and Latin America a couple times a year. But I've decided to take a trip with him next month to Africa. That's a first step for me. But I also want to do something on a local level and something more consistent. And I want to do it under the radar screen. I don't want to make a big deal about it. I'm just investigating a few ministries in the area where maybe I could volunteer and have my heart touched by the least of these. And make sure that I'm not just always in the first world, always teaching workshops, always doing things to a group of people who have a lot, but allowing myself to rub shoulders with people who Jesus said really represent Him and come alongside them in some small way. Well, those are the three ways I'm going to try to guard my heart this season: through spiritual practices, safe relationships, and some stretching experiences. And I don't have a lack of hope. You know, even in these conversations with others, and as I look at my own heart, I don't walk away and say, well, That's just the way it is, and none of us are ever really going to be able to be as much like Christ as we profess to be, or as maybe the wider public thinks we are. But then a couple weeks ago, I visited another church and hadn't been familiar with them at all. I flew there just to do a little consulting with them. And I spent some time individually with some of their senior leaders, and I kept hearing about their pastor. And he was away, and I couldn't meet him till towards the end of the weekend. But I kept hearing such positive things. These folks had every opportunity, if they wanted to indicate to me something different. But instead, they painted a picture of a man who's gracious and humble and gentle, truly for them, someone they love serving alongside. Well, then the last day I got to meet him, and everything they said was confirmed. I'm not saying this guy's perfect, but I could see that he is very Christ-like. And as I got on the plane, I had a smile on my face because I witnessed a team that is functioning well, a team that's healthy, a team where each person is learning how to speak truth to each other, even if they have to stumble sometimes to do it. A team that didn't feel toxic, And that's the kind of team I want to be a part of and I want to contribute to. So my challenge to you is to guard your heart above all else. You're going to face a lot of stuff this ministry season. I'm sure you, like we, have tons of challenges and goals and tasks that you're trying to tackle. But what is the condition of your heart? Are you paying attention to it? Those 3 words get me every time. Above all else. Guard your heart. For everything we do flows out of that.